Baltimore Comic-Con treat because it is very infrequently that we get somebody from the 1960s era who's still alive, active, and willing to share their knowledge with us. So Barbara Friedlander, you know, after years of staying under the radar, as it was, you know, resurfaced in comic people's memories just a few years ago. Unfortunately, she's here today to you know, talk about what comics were like back then and being a woman in the business. And you really started young. You answered an ad at 19 that just changed your world.
It did. My father had passed away that year, and I didn't know what to do with myself. So I thought I'd go to school at night. I went to Hunter College. I lived in the city. And I got a job during the day. And the job was at DC Comics. But it was not where you think it was. It was in the clerical department. And I was taking writing courses at Hunter. And I had written myself, you know, like everybody has to do stuff, so I wrote. I had several diaries that I was working on. And I befriended the editors. First of all, I was a new face in the separated clerical department, which contained the secretaries to all the people, a vice president, president, and then if you wanted your paycheck, they would eventually give it to you, but most of the editors came around. So I was a new face on the block, and when I got the job, I had no idea Superman was my boss at all. But I enjoyed working there, and then I suddenly realized some of these things I might be able to do. And I did. I wrote a couple of stories for Jack Miller, who was then the romance editor. And he liked them. He encouraged me to go on. He kind of taught me formula, because romance writing was a formula then. There were maybe 5 or 6 different stories, and the characters had different names. This is an aside. What got me was the older comic books had names like Thelma and Selma. And I was laughing because that was like beyond my backstory all the way. I had relatives named Selma and Thelma. And so I immediately said, I can't write using those names. You have to have more names that contemporary that people can relate to. So, I mean, that was not a tremendous change, but what it did was it reached to Jill and Kelly and all those other people whose names were not being used. And I enjoyed it. Everything I did, every day I was there, I was terrified.
Terrified of?
I was terrified. I was the only little girl there. And I felt belittled by a lot of people because they ignored me, they spoke over me, and romance was not the biggest deal in the world. I had no idea until I did a panel the other day that the reason we had so many books was because those books were selling very well. No one schooled me on how the business side of anything worked. And I was too dumb and too, I had no...
You were naive.
I was a dopey girl, yes.
Okay, so let's roll back just a little bit. I mean, you know, when you started in the clerical subscription department, your boss was Arthur Gutowitz, who was the treasurer.
Yes.
I met Arthur at the end of his time at DC.
Right.
But my impression is he was like the rest of the executives, like Jack Leibowitz and Donenfeld, in that he was very traditional in male-female roles. I think he told you should be married.
Every day. What are you doing here? Why are you doing this job? Get married. You'll have a house. You'll have children. He was a very sweet man. He would make me do typing And I had spent my whole life not wanting to know how to type. So when I had to type stories, it was like torture time for me. But he made me take dictation, which was a joke.
Oh gosh.
I mean, I said, Arthur, I can't write, I can't do this fast. He said, you learn. I've never learned.
Now, you maybe have been the youngest, but you certainly weren't the only woman. As I recall, Louise was working with Milt Snapin in the film department, and you had Gerda Gattel.
Gerda was there. I don't know anybody named Louise in the film department.
I'm sorry, okay, she may
That's
come later.
beyond my ken.
Okay, but Gerda came up from Marvel. She was working in production.
Marvel?
She had started there, I believe.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and she worked in production. She was the proofreader.
She was a library head.
Yes.
Oh, she was a fantastic woman, the most efficient and lovely lady I have ever met. She was.
Julie Schwartz always told me that they used Gerda as a barometer for whether or not a book was going to be successful, because when DC licensed Pat Boone, who was a big singer at the time, they did a comic, and Gerda loved it. It was her favorite comic, and Julie said, we're doomed. And it got canceled.
That's true. That's true, Pat Boone. You know Pat Boone, who he was. Okay.
Yeah. So, what do you think Jack Miller saw in you?
I was very pretty.
I mean, for context, Larry Nadel had been the editor of the romance books until he suddenly died. Jack Miller had been freelancing for DC as a writer through the 1950s, wrote a lot of the Aquaman stories, Ramona Fredon drew, and the others. And then he got hired full-time as the editor for the romance books, and not long after, he brought you on to write stories.
Right, I wrote stories for him. He taught me the formula of how to do it, and I realized I was writing a whole character in 8 pages, and he taught me how to do that. And I said, Jack, can I add a few things that I would like to add, because I think girls would like them. And so I added a fashion page, which was done by Tony Abruzzo, who was a wonderful artist, but also he had been in the fashion field.
Ah.
So, you didn't know that?
No.
He had a line of clothes.
He is one of the few artists from that era I know nothing about.
His niece or somebody called me recently to ask about Tony. Mm-hmm. And I said, I really know very little, except the man was incredibly talented and incredibly unhappy at DC. They when they had an artist, they tortured some of the artists. They had no idea how to deal with talent. They were just dumb when it came to that.
Which is interesting, considering Jack himself had been talented not long before.
Yeah, he was treated well. We all know what happened to Jack.
We can touch on that a little bit later, but it's interesting that back then, you and Jack did the romance books.
Right.
Kanigher did the war books and Wonder Woman.
Mm-hmm.
Schwartz had the science fiction, some of the superheroes. Weisinger had the Superman stuff. Harvey Boltinoff was doing things like Sea Devils and with George Cashton.
Right.
But everybody was in their own little silo. So was there a lot of back and forth? Did you guys get to know one another, or did you just stay in your office?
You got to know one another occasionally, but these men knew each other for years, so they were friendly with one another. They didn't want anybody else in their clique. I was friendly with Scott. I was friendly with Bob Haney. I was friendly with...
When you say Scott, you mean J. Scott Pike?
Yeah.
The artist? Okay.
I wasn't, friendly with him, but he was the most human person. He came in a suit. He was a very... Do you remember him?
I met him only once. He visited the offices in the 80s.
Yeah, that's what I did too. Working with him, he was a complete professional. Absolutely talented beyond belief, and he didn't take a lot of crap from anybody. Most of them did, because they needed the money. So the work. I shouldn't say the money, the work. They needed the work. And they worked not only for romance, and not only for Scooter, and not only for that, they worked in a hero department as well. They were super, super talented.
Well, I mean, no, Tony only did the romance books.
Yeah.
And people like John Romita and Gene Cohen only did the romance books. Sikowski did both.
Yes, some were crossovers, some were just comfortable with where they were, and they were making a decent living because you always saw Romita on a cover.
Right.
Yeah, until I think when I got there, they really stopped using John.
Yeah, you came in '65. Stan was trying to poach John. John went to somebody at DC, and they offered him Metamorpho to try and keep him, and he said, "I'll take Spider-Man instead."
Yeah, yeah, and of course I mention this every time I speak, but if you worked at DC during that time, couldn't work for anybody else. As soon as DC knew that you went to another place to get money and work and have your family, they fired you. They didn't want to have anything to do with you for some stupid reason. Was it like that when you were there?
No, it had broken down during the 1970s. So by the time I got there in the 80s, it was much different.
Yeah, it was ridiculously small. It was a mom and pop operation. It really was. I saw it from a completely different viewpoint than other people saw it. I saw the giant computer that they had on the others. Did you ever see that?
No.
It was like, if you ever saw the movie Death Set, there was a giant computer just starting. And every so often when I was in the clerical department, I had to go over there. You had to put like sweaters on because it was freezing on the other side. And that's the department that was keeping everybody going.
So, let's see, there is Young Love, Young Romance, Heartthrobs.
Secret Hearts, Girls Love, Young Romance.
So, yeah, so there were about 5 or 6 titles. So you and Jack split them evenly?
No.
How did it work?
I did 2. I did 2, and I wrote for other books. He wrote for all the books. Jack was the most prolific writer I have ever met in my life, and he was doing other stories. He was doing Batman. He was doing the war stories. And if you ever have a book that's given out by DC, you have to buy an anthology of DC.
They've got a number of them.
You'll see what all the stuff that
Jack was quite prolific.
Yeah.
So there were 3 stories per issue. And did you and Jack write all of these stories? Did anybody else write for you?
Not with Jack there, no.
And as you wrote these stories, did you talk to each other about, all right, I'm going to do a story about, falling in love with my professor, so don't do that the same month, or did you?
Good plot. No, I would go to Jack and I would say, I'm going to write a story about my falling in love with my professor, and he'd say, okay, go do it. He would help me and correct me, but he wanted me to learn. So I was learning by fire. That's how I did it.
So as you started writing stories before you came on staff, moved over to the editorial department, I should say, who taught you how to write the page panel breakdowns?
I had to learn that myself.
Did somebody give you copies of scripts?
Yes. They gave me copies of scripts to learn how to do it. And as I said before, I wasn't a typist. So my typing was horrible. My spelling was horrible. It took me much longer than anybody else. Jack would sit there, and that was the story. It was done. And I'd be sitting, like that. You can't have a career like that. You really have to put everything you have into that career, whatever it is. You can't do it half-assed.
Okay. And as you were writing these stories, did you write with any of the artists in mind, or somebody walked in and said, I need a script?
No. I was yelled at because I wanted only certain artists. And Jack said to me, Barbara, these men have families. They have to make a living. You have to use them in whatever you were doing. And so I tried desperately to get Scott on my covers, and I was successful in that for a long time. And I tried to get Tony on my covers. There were they did inking or they did pencils.
Right.
And I tried very hard. There were other artists that I didn't want to use. Actually, I will tell you, John Rosenberger was one of the artists that didn't want to use.
Oh, okay.
Okay, everybody who loves John Rosenberger, I have grown to respect the man. But back then, I thought of him as a Archie kind of a guy.
Oh, interesting, okay.
Because he had done some work for Archie.
I was unfamiliar with his romance work. I mean, he later migrated to doing Lois Lane stories and Wonder Woman, and I got to see he could do straight stuff pretty well.
He could. But somebody told me that, and this is really, but I was very young, and I didn't have enough, what's the word? Experience to understand that people can grow. I should have known that for myself, but people grow, they change, and I was yet to understand that. I grew to understand that as I got older.
Okay. And so who are you talked about Scott on the covers, but did you have favorite artists for the stories?
I tried to get those guys in my stories as much as I possibly could. I could not because Jack did a lot of the assigning.
Oh, I see.
And so your cover could be one group of artists, your inside was somebody else. And you could really tell the difference in the stories, but the girls did not care. They just wanted these stories. So.
And was this the time in DC's history when production controlled who did the inking and lettering? Or did you control?
That I do know. The lettering, we had a bullpen. Did you have a bullpen?
No, by then it was all freelance.
Okay. Well, they had in the middle of the, at 575 Lexington, they had a bullpen area run by, one side was Saul Harrison and the other side was Jack Adler. I don't know what it came to be afterwards, but one side did coloring and one side did cover layouts, actually. And that was that, oh God, what was it? Irishman.
Right, Ira, who everybody knows is the man who designed the Superman telescopic logo, among other things. I mean, he was a legend and worth knowing about. When you say the cover, I mean, he did the cover mechanicals. He put those together. But
I didn't use that term, but you're correct.
Well, I just wanted to be, because I wanted to ask, this is just before Carmine Infantino comes in to play cover editor. So who had to approve your covers? Donenfeld?
Fortunately, I left when Carmine came in. I had shared an office with Carmine, Nelson Bridwell, and Jack Miller. And Carmine did not like me, and I did not like him.
Oh, gosh.
And so there was tremendous friction in that office. He would walk in. Actually, I must tell you something about Carmine. He was a beautiful man, a physically beautiful man. And so his characters bodies were really beautiful and muscular. And that, I think, was the first time that you had seen Superman go like, he just did beautiful, beautiful artwork. That I respect him for. I don't respect him.
Well, it's interesting that he shared an office with you because at that point he was still freelancing Batman and Flash. So.
Yes. But he was also, he had somebody negotiating for him with Donenfeld.
Okay.
And he knew he was going to get a big position. And so he walked it in like he knew he was going to get a big position.
And how did you wind up with Nelson, who was Mort Weisinger's assistant?
Well, you don't think Mort was going to let Nelson in his office, do you?
I was just asking.
Mort would come in with his suits. That one. He was a big, big man. And there's one man that I did a Comic-Con for, the head of the Comic-Con in Pennsylvania, Northeast Comic-Con.
Okay.
Looked exactly like Mort Weisinger.
Oh, wow.
And I said, my God, you look just like him. And he looked at me like I was crazy because that's ancient history. Most people don't know who Mort was. But he was a character who made Nelson copy read everything. And Nelson used to use a, what do you call it, a razor.
Okay.
He used a razor. If a little feather of a line was, he would go like this. He'd spend so much time, and Mort would come in, and poor Nelson would make all his crazy noises. And
he had health issues that
yeah, he did.
made these ticking sounds.
And he was such a lovely character. He was a character.
Brilliant man.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And he created Inferior 5, actually.
Right.
Okay. But Mort would come in and scream at him for no particular reason. Maybe a line wasn't done or something, but it was pathetic. He was pathetic.
Now, did you have, since Donenfeld ran the editorial side of things, did you have a lot of interaction with him?
Yes, a lot of interaction.
What kind of manager was he?
I think he really didn't know what he was doing,
okay.
but he did it well. He didn't know what he was doing because I don't think he was trained in that.
Well, he was trained by his father, Harry Donenfeld, who helped found DC, so. No?
You see, I have to tell you another story because I was there with the old timers, and I said some of this the other day. They were a printing company when they started, not a giant printing company, and they did wedding invitations and things like that, and what kept them going was
the pulp magazines.
The pulp magazines, and they didn't particularly make big money then. I don't think.
No, these were the secondary titles, things like Spicy Detective and Spicy Western. They like the word spicy.
Which was fine. I mean, you had to do that to survive. That's what they did to survive in the 30s. And in 1938?
Well, 35, Will and Nicholson starts with DC traces its history to it, and Donenfeld and Leibowitz came in and partnered with him, and Will and Nicholson ran into financial trouble, and then they pretty much forced him out right before Action Comics #1.
Right, and that's what they became. I mean, Action Comics made them, made their company into a dynamite business.
Yeah, I mean, they had 3 titles before that. They had New Fun Comics, More Fun Comics, New Fun became Adventure Comics, I believe, and Detective Comics. And the 4th title was going to be Action. So we're really at the very beginning of things.
Yes.
And of course, DC takes its initials from Detective Comics.
The old school used to say Donenfeld Comics.
Yes.
Okay.
So, did you interact with Leibowitz at all? Because he was more the businessman.
Leibowitz, at that time, I think, was negotiating.
He made the sale in '67.
Right. I was still there in '67. And he made the sale in '67, and he had the office on the end with the big windows, like you would expect. And Lillian Mandel was his secretary. I'm just giving you some.
Yep, that.
And was she still there?
Toward the very end, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And she was very efficient. She was an old school secretary, and very little interaction, if any. No, he was president, and so that's what he was. He wore very nice suits. I have to do this because that's the way I think. You know, he wore very nice suits. He had a little mustache, I think, and he was balding with white hair.
Yep.
I remember him. The other person that I remembered was Mr. Schwartz.
Julie Schwartz, sure.
Yeah, he was a character too, but there was somebody else from the old-time printing company. I cannot remember his name.
Samplaner? Paul Samplaner from the Independent News Distribution.
No, there was a guy there.
Woody Cashton, who was a head.
Was he Siegel? I don't know. He had a name like that.
Sure. Jack Schiff.
No.
No?
Okay, this was an old guy from that old printing school who was made head of promotions or popularity. In other words, he was allowed to go out at lunch, get drunk with George the chauffeur. You don't know this?
No.
Okay. He got drunk with George because George would drive him around in their limousine, and he would meet with people. I have no idea what people, but wow. I doubt if they ever let him go with the Time Warner people.
Right.
But he was part of their family, that so-called family. So he was there, and if he saw you drinking water, he was a very friendly guy. He would say, you don't drink that water, you know what fish do in water, don't you? Because he was a drinker. But he was a lovely, kind guy, and he sent everybody a Christmas card. And it had no stamps on it. He sent it with a return address of where you lived.
That's smart.
That's so that's something you should know. But I learned all these things these were characters when I was there. They were characters.
So when you wanted to, before you created Scooter, you decided to add series to your romance books. You had Reach for Happiness and Three Girls, Their Lives. And I'm wondering, did you have to get approval to add regular features, or was that just you and Jack?
That was me and Jack.
But that grew out of your love of soap operas.
Oh God, yes. I love soap operas. I love old movies. If they let me, I would have written Joan Crawford and Betty Davis, and I did actually into my scripts. I've seen all their movies, and I knew people loved it then. I would update it and make it now, and they were successful. That whole series was successful.
And one of the other things you did, you talked earlier about how you updated names to more contemporary ones. You also brought a fashion sense to the stuff. You really love fashion. Where were you getting your inspiration? Was it Vogue and Mademoiselle or elsewhere?
Yes, Vogue and Mademoiselle and certain things that there was a photo play magazine at the time, so whatever the celebrities were wearing, I would take the pictures out and I would give them to Tony Abruzzo, who had a background in fashion, and he would interpret them on pages, and it was successful. It really was, because girls liked those things, and I was a girl writing for girls.
And I'm told you really loved writing the Mad Mob Modes for Moderns feature?
Mad Modes for Moderns, I love that.
So do you want to tell the audience what that was?
That was a double page, and I got paid extra for that, of fashion. And I would write little blurbs of things, why it was chic to do this. And I also did makeup columns, which I decided what I would like and put that in there. And I had to read all the fashion magazines and the advice and all that, and that's how you learn it. You read it, you interpret it, and then you do it. And that's exactly how I learned to do these things, and I love the fashion, and I love the advice.
Well, you also wrote the advice columns,
Yes.
and unfortunately you couldn't really give the advice that you wanted to.
No, I could not.
Because there's the Comics Club, and I think Donenfeld and Leibowitz were very conservative.
So, yes, but you couldn't give people who had terrible tragedies happen, pregnancies and runaways and all kinds of, you could not reach these people because they had gone, and they were desperate, so they were writing to people who they thought were real. They thought these people were real, like, I can't remember any, Marion somebody and another Jill somebody. They were not real people, but they needed real advice, so you had to paraphrase everything. You could never use their real letters, and just generally say what they should do.
Right. Now, before we get to Scooter, last question, apparently you and Miller tried to write screenplays together.
We did.
My understanding is you bring them home to Mom, who cooked for you, and you collaborate. What was that like?
My mother would say to me, Barbara, you go to work every day. What do you do? She really meant, what do I do? I said, Mama, I'm working, and I called her Mama. I'm working for Superman. She said, I know who he is. What do you have to do with it? But she liked Jack, and she she kind of went along with it, even though she had no idea what I was doing. And this was a very smart woman who ran a business and had no idea why anybody would do what I did. I should get married and have grandchildren, which I actually did.
Okay. The screenplay's never sold. Did he have an agent?
We had an agent in London.
Okay.
And I went to London to visit the agent. But it was the time of Peter Sellers. And these were scripts that Peter Sellers could do. It was that kind of loose, wonderful, clever comedy.
Sorry, it never happened.
I'm sorry it never happened.
Sure. All right, so, you get hired in 64, you join staff in 65, you move over to editorial in 65. Here it is, 1966. Batman is everywhere. The Batmania craze is underway. You pivot a different direction, and you and Miller come up with Swing with Scooter. How did that happen?
Excuse me, I'm going to set this.
Please.
Miller did not help me with Swing with Scooter.
My bad.
You are bad. This was something Saul Harrison. Saul was a wonderful, wonderful man, and I'm glad to. I met him several years later when I went up to D.C. at the Rock. They called it
75 Rock, yeah.
Yeah, but Saul said, Archie does well, but I don't want to make it up. We have Binky, we have Schminky, we have all these things. Do something different. And of course, the Beatles were in town. 65, I think the Beatles were in town.
65 was the Shea Stadium visit. Yeah.
Okay. I was dating a guy who actually went.
Okay.
He was a writer for news. Anyway, I digress. Okay, so I used that theme. I used one of the Beatles, but I called them the Banshees, I think.
Yeah.
The Banshees. Who decided he didn't want the limelight anymore because he was a schmuck. So he came to the U.S. because he thought he'd have wonderful anonymity.
Yes. Anonymity.
And he did. And he ended up in the same boat as Archie, because I had left it after several issues I left. And I think Carmine and, I don't know who, was it Giordano who took over for that?
I think so.
But Giordano had done the first cover, and then possibly the second, although there was somebody else in between. Anyway, it ended up that Scarpelli was doing the cover.
Henry Scarpelli, who very versatile artist, did a lot of Archie's and comic strip material.
And there was another guy that did it too.
Did Orlando?
Orlando did the first covers when I was there.
Okay.
But Scarpelli was like at the death of Scooter. The last 10 issues, when everything was dead at that particular time. They changed him. He was now a real Archie.
So the process would have been, Saul gives you this idea, you create the character. How did it get approved to become a series? Did Donenfeld have to sign off on it?
Donenfeld signed off on it.
And you were the writer-editor?
Yes.
Okay.
I was a bad editor, I have to say, because I liked the stories more than I made the corrections. But the production department liked me a lot. So they helped me when they did the lettering.
Great.
They did. One of my stories had the word yacht in it, which I continued to spell yacht. And they knew me, and they laughed, and they would change it for me. But I was learning on the job.
Right. What was the reaction? Was there any reaction in-house to the book, or any idea of it was popular?
No. I had no idea. Nobody had no idea, but the book went on for 10 years. And nobody patted me on the head and said, "Good job, little girl." They never did that. I don't think they did that for anybody.
Not that I'm aware of.
No, they didn't know how to say you did that was wonderful. The only person who was kind and generous with himself and his emotions, I think was all.
Okay.
And he was very happy that I had done what I had done. And I had never created a character before like that. And it was something I was happy to do, but I had no idea what that meant. I got no recognition for it. It was just another day at the job. And it was like that for lots of people who did character.
But my understanding is you made enough of an impression on them that they had plans for you.
Yes.
At the same time Leibowitz was selling DC to Kinney. But they sent you to study at the feet of the great Sheldon Mayer.
Mm-hmm.
How did he treat you?
It was very nice. I had to take my grumpy mother with me. And she said, "Why the hell are you taking me? I have to ride on a train. Couldn't you?" That's my mother. So I said, "Mom, please." He was going to stay with me, and his wife was going to show my mother all the antique stores and things like that. And his wife did makeup and stuff like that, organic makeup.
Okay.
So,
But, what was Shelley there to teach you that Miller couldn't teach you?
well, he was so involved with Sugar and Spike.
Right.
And they wanted that kind of humor. They wanted to groom me, and I'm like creating Scooter. I had no idea what they were doing. They were sending me there. I said, "Jack, do you know who this guy is?" He said, "Yes, he used to write Sugar and Spike." "Oh, I love Sugar and Spike."
But more than that, he was an influential editor.
Yes, so they were sending me there to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't they have told me that? No.
Oh.
They just sent me there like I should know. I was a kid. Said, "Tell me why you're sending me someplace." They didn't tell me, but I will tell you, as nice as Sheldon was, and as he chased me around the table.
Did he now?
Yes, he did.
Shame
And
on
he
you.
had very bad eyesight. It was the time when he could not do anything because his eyes were bad.
Yeah, he slowed down dramatically, and then he had breathing issues, and it was a very sad.
Okay, but this is the first time I ever told you, anyone that. But,
Okay,
so,
that's interesting.
put that under your hat.
All right, so Leibowitz sells in '67. How long before they fired you?
They never fired me. They
What
fired
happened?
Jack. I left. I walked out. My friend Irene came up. We were going out for lunch, which is something we always did. And I said, "Irene, I don't think I can go back there. I have no idea what I'm doing there. No one welcomes me. No one likes, me as a person, except for this small group of people that only show up every so often to do writing in the room." I said, "I'm not going back here anymore." And I didn't. I really walked out. No one fired me. They asked me, "Please come back."
Okay.
If they had said to me, "Barbara, we're grooming you to be XYZ, I would have understood, but I had no idea. I was as scared as everyone else because they were being taken over, not by Kinney, but by...
No, Steve Ross and Kinney became Warner.
Yeah, but by these other suits, and it scared the hell out of me. I was like 20, somewhat, very young. I was very young once, and very stupid in a lot of respects. And when you have to be taught in a school or someplace, somebody has to give you direction. I didn't have direction, but I had some talent at the time.
Well, clearly. So you left comics. As I understood, then you got married.
I got married and had children.
But then in the early '70s, you get called by Ross Andrew and Mike Esposito to do some writing for them.
And I did write.
They were trying to launch a humor magazine, so they thought you were funny?
Apparently, they liked my work. I used to use them, so, they knew me, they liked me, and I wrote for them 2 issues.
I think that's all they published.
Yeah, they had tried several times.
Magazine was called Up Your Nose and Out Your Ear.
Right. It And so I wrote a few things. I wrote the origin story and things like that. That I felt more comfortable doing because I had done it. Nobody told me if it sold or anything. But I liked these guys. They were nice to me and I was nice to them. And it was a relationship. It wasn't, you know, scary.
Okay. So you married, you're raising your children. Did you continue to write? What have you been doing since all this?
Occasionally I sit and write, but I have a bunch of, my husband was a lawyer, so I have these yellow law pads, and I would write on them because God forbid I should type. And I would write on them and shove them in drawers, and that's where they stayed. But when I did my first show, Comic-Con, people came over to me and said, same thing, why did you stop writing? And I can tell you I was more comfortable not having to come up against people that scared the hell out of me, you know? And I stopped writing because it wasn't something I felt comfortable doing until when I worked with Jack and Jack passed away, I couldn't work with him anymore.
Before you left staff, he had already gotten sick with cancer, right?
He was sick with cancer, yeah.
Yeah.
May I say something? His son-in-law was a doctor. This man had lung cancer, and he didn't go to a doctor because his son-in-law was a doctor. Don't do that. Don't do that. Go to a doctor. That's all I want to say.
Right. I mean, Jack unfortunately had a very sad ending to his life and career that left a black mark, but we should remember all the good stuff he did.
He did a lot, yes.
So, we're almost out of time, but I want to see, is there anything you guys want to know that I have yet to ask? Any questions for Barbara? Go ahead.
I was very curious to know, did you read any comic books before you
Yeah.
came to DC? Was there anything that you really
Archie.
enjoyed?
I was an Archie girl. And I was Billy the Model girl and a Katie Keene girl. I was a girl, you know, and stuff. I never read superheroes, never. Or war.
In the back?
Yes, I was just wondering, because this is a romance comic at DC, right?
Yes.
So, it's not Batman, it's not Superman, so was there ever a sense of, well, it's going to be for girls, and it's not Superman or Batman or a big blockbuster, so, you know, you can do whatever you want because the expectations are different, and the audience is smaller. So, did it ever work out like that?
Well, you got that impression, but if the books were not selling, you'd be dead. They'd take them off.
I know,
But don't
live in a world where Scooter has a bunch of blockbuster movies, unfortunately.
Well,
But neither did Superman and Batman at the same time. Remember, this is the 60s. This is,
60s, yeah.
you know, you had the Batman TV show, and that was 2 years, and then there was nothing. So you're applying current thinking to back then.
Yeah, as long as they were making money for the company, that's all they cared. They were a mom and pop company. They didn't want, till Time Warner came in, they really didn't expand into movies and into merchandising like that. They were very satisfied doing what they did. Very simple.
I just kind of want to make a comment about what you went through. It was very much, we still were fighting a bit. It was an era where women were very diminished and their role in society. We were writing just to that group, and if it may have been even an important part, they were diminishing that, no matter what. And you were diminished in your role.
Oh, yeah.
And you could tell just like yesterday, when you had that big panel, everybody was all the nurses, you go, yeah, you're great, great. And you got no credit whatsoever.
That was the story of my life.
Yeah, and it's still a lot that way, it looks like.
Yeah.
All the men are patting themselves in the back, and
But
women are
that was an all-boys club
No.
over there.
Yeah, it really was back then, wasn't it? I mean, because the guys were,
Yeah.
you know, Julie and the others were playing bridge during lunch, and I'm sure you weren't
I
invited.
wasn't invited to lunch, so I don't know. I had my own lunch.
Anything else? Did you get? Yes.
Oh yeah, hi. So I teach at Johns Hopkins. I teach a course in romance comics. And
Really?
the students love you. They love you. Whenever, I like never say anything at all about you at all. They read a bunch of different comics, and they're drawn to your stories. Precisely because what you said, you were a girl writing for girls.
Right.
When they're reading your stories, they're like, she has an interior life. There's something going on. And oh my gosh, the fashion. Oh my gosh, the Mad Notes mods.
Thank
They
you.
cannot get over it. They
Thank
love you.
Oh,
That's
well,
great.
I'm very happy to be a guest at Johns Hopkins. Thank you.
Keep that in mind.
Okay.
Anything else? Otherwise, actually, let's see. We're just at the end time, so last chance for questions. If not, thank you, Barbara, for your time. You're gonna go back to your table. All right, so Barbara will be at her table. So stop by, chat, buy things, whatever.
Yeah.